welcome to Capitol Hill. A prudent middle path or accounting trickery? The government and opposition views of the mid-year budget update today diverge almost as much as the forecast for the deficit at budget time and today. That deficit for this financial year is projected to be $15 billion higher at $37 billion. The government still says they'll get to a surplus in 2012-13, but the surplus has been shaved to just $1.5 billion. The government's cut, deferred and brought forward spending to the tune of a net saving of $7 billion. But the question is, how vulnerable is that wafer-thin surplus to economic shocks from overseas? Joining me to discuss the budget update are Labor MP Amanda Rishworth and Liberal MP Alan Tudge. Welcome to you both.
Hi there, Lyndal. Hi, Amanda.
First, though, to the overview presented of the budget update by the Treasurer and the reaction from the opposition.
We have put forward, I think, a prudent and appropriate set of numbers. If you like, we've taken the middle path between those who say we don't need a surplus and those who say that we should take a really big axe to spending. We've taken the middle path because we're committed to getting the balance right, and I think that's what Australians have come to expect.
There is now no buffer against international economic problems because of the policies and the incompetence of this government. Under the former government, we had a $20 billion surplus. We had $70 billion worth of net assets. That has been completely blown because of the policies and the incompetence of this government.
Amanda Rishworth, the Treasurer's delivered a surplus forecast for 2012-13, but it's not a very healthy surplus, is it?
Well, look, obviously, Lyndal, there has been a lot of economic turmoil around the world, including in Europe, and we've seen a hit to the budget bottom line from that less tax revenues coming in from that turmoil we see around the globe. Despite that, the Treasurer has made it very clear that despite this economic turmoil, we need to do what is fiscally prudent to actually bring the budget back to surplus. So we are committed to doing that, and we are following strict fiscal discipline to actually do that while supporting jobs at the same time. Through the global financial crisis, we supported jobs, and we continue to do so now, but ensuring that around the world that we do stick to this, our strict fiscal plan, and that has been recognised by rating agencies, Fitch today, which gave our credit rating a big tick.
Alan, the opposition, your leader, Tony Abbott, and the opposition's economic spokesman also talked today about the dangers from the global economy, particularly from Europe. Hasn't the government done the right thing in not cutting spending too much in order not to damage the slower economic growth that Australia has?
Well, Lyndal, this was an opportunity for the government to show that they had spending under control, and they failed in this. The budget deficit just for this year alone has blown out from $22 billion to $37 billion. And as you heard from Mr Abbott beforehand, the net debt position has blown out from $107 billion to now $132 billion. And far from contracting its expenditure, this mid-year financial update has actually increased expenditure by $11 billion over the next 4 years.
Amanda, the revenue was hit in this financial year to the tune of $5 billion because of the global economic wobbles. How can you be certain that you can deliver a surplus if, indeed, as the Treasurer said today, the storm clouds over Europe are gathering?
Well, look, as the Treasurer also said, I mean, if there is a huge hit that's unpredicted, but then of course we will have to revisit it. But where we're looking now, we've got the forecasts in place, and we are determined to put in these strong fiscal rules to bring the budget back to surplus. But of course, we've heard Tony Abbott huffing and puffing out there today with a whole lot of bluster about this. Well, really, what we've only heard from him is negativity. We have heard no alternative policy policies. No comment on which of our measures he'll support, which he won't. We're doing the responsible thing. We know that there's a $70 billion black hole in Tony Abbott's accounting, and that's just to get him to the starting point. He hasn't indicated any alternative plan. All he's done is just huff and puff. Well, he can go and do that. We will continue to get it on with the job to manage this economy, to find the right balance, to ensure that we're supporting jobs, but also to ensure that we are holding the budget to a strict fiscal rules, and we'll continue to do that. And Tony Abbott might want to huff and puff, but we're going to get on with the job.
Alan,
let's put this surplus into context. We're talking about a $1.5 billion surplus in 2012-2013. Now, for that surplus to be maintained, the Labor government has to not spend any more money for 18 months. Now, in the last 6 months, it's blown its budget by $15 billion from when it was forecast 6 months ago. So over 6 months, it blows out by $15 billion, and it is trying to make us believe that it won't spend a cent over the next 18 months in order to secure its tiny wafer-thin surplus of $1.5 billion in 18 months' time. Could I also just make this point, though, Lyndal, is that even if they do make that $1.5 billion surplus next year, 0.1% of GDP, it still doesn't address the net debt of $132 billion. And at the rate of only paying it off at $1.5 billion per annum, it'll take almost 90 years before the net debt is paid off.
If we could move on now to one of these specific cuts the government has made, and that was an efficiency dividend for the public sector, increasing that in 2012-13 by an extra 2.5%. There were some strong reactions to that today.
Our expectation is that agencies will find savings in a range of areas to meet this one-off increase, including reductions, for example, in the use of travel, consultants, hospitality, advertising. And I would remind people that we have delivered some $10 billion worth of reforms in government efficiency since we came to government. The government's strong expectation is that agencies will continue to meet the efficiency dividend without resorting to forced redundancies.
Our best analysis shows that up to 3,000 jobs will be lost in every community around Australia. Those are real jobs providing real services, and that will have a dramatic impact on communities.
There's not a rationale to this. It's right across the board. It just says cut the public service. With all the onflowing loss of services and jobs, so that we can satisfy the rating agencies. We've put forward better alternatives. So we'll be scrutinising very carefully where these cuts apply.
Amanda, the Public Service Union estimates that this increased efficiency dividend will cost 3,000 jobs. How does that fit in with the government saying jobs are your top priority?
Well, Penny Wong clearly made it clear in her press conference that there would be no forced redundancies. We expect that the public service will be able to find these efficiency dividends in their core business, in working through some of those areas like advertising, like a whole range of different things. We have had an efficiency dividend now working for some time, which has saved the government billions of dollars, and we believe we will continue to be able to find efficiencies.
But at election time, the Labor was quite critical of the efficiency dividend that certainly the Howard government had in place, and there was a promise at the last election not to increase it, something you've now done twice.
Well, look, we have had to make difficult decisions. There is no doubt that the turbulence in Europe and around the world, in America, has led to us needing to find savings. We believe that this is one of the measures that we will take, and it'll be interesting to see what the opposition has to say about this and whether or not they'll support it. They couldn't say whether or not they would support this today. Their usual negativity, as I said before, but we will continue to look at this. Now, we have said we will get stakeholders around the table to talk with them about how these gains can be made, and we will continue to pursue that. But we do believe that there can be, through this one-off 2.5, I think, dividend measure, actually find savings without job losses.
Alan, the Coalition's promised it would cut the public service even harder. Joe Hockey said that you'd axe 12,000 jobs. Is the public service an easy mark for politicians?
Well, that was part of our policy which we took to the last election, whereas Julia Gillard went to the last election promising that she wouldn't make any such cuts. So in some respects, the policy which Julia Gillard has now announced, or Wayne Swan has announced today, is very similar to what we took to the last election.
Well, it's not, Alan, it's different.
And we had a policy of retiring 12,000 public servants over the forward estimates, basically when people retire themselves and they wouldn't be replaced. And we thought that was a reasonable policy. Bear in mind, Lyndal, that since 2007, the public service has grown by 20,000 staff members since 2007 alone. So this wouldn't even, a cut of 12,000 wouldn't even bring it back to 2007 levels.
Isn't it the case, and I'll ask you both this, starting with you, Amanda, that cuts to the public service of the magnitude that you're both proposing are going to affect frontline services and going to affect the public?
Well, we believe that there's a number of areas that we can actually find efficiencies, and as you mentioned before, some are in advertising, some have been in travel, whole range of different areas that we believe. We will sit down, as I said, with the stakeholders to work through those efficiency dividends, but our policy is quite different from the Liberal Party policy, which was just a blanket freeze on recruiting any more people to the public service, which means in allowing in new areas, you just wouldn't have the staff to deliver important government programs.
Alan, I'll put that question now to you. Your proposed cuts to the public service would in the end affect members of the public because it would affect frontline services.
Well, people will have to be more efficient in what they do, and that's the case across our entire society. I mean, that's how we become wealthier generally, is by all of us being more productive, and the public service is no different. And in addition to that, there will be some things which we won't need as many public servants in. And for example, we are committed to rescinding the carbon tax. Now, there's been about 1,000 people which have been employed into the climate change department alone just to implement the carbon tax.
Well, what are you going to do with your policies, Alan?
So we've got a much less regulatory policy in that regard, so we won't need 1,000 people.
If I could finally ask just quickly to both of you, first to you, Alan, the Treasurer said that consumers are still being cautious. Do you think your voters are feeling cautious because of the news we're getting from Europe?
I do think that my constituents in Aston are feeling cautious still because of the news in Europe, and also, with due respect, I don't think the government gives us an enormous amount of confidence. I mean, when we still see the debt ballooning out from $22 billion deficit out to a $37 billion deficit, people still feel as if the government hasn't got control of the economy.
Amanda, are your constituents feeling any more secure, or are they too worried by events in Europe?
Well, I think there is some concern in Europe and also in America. I think we need to see both of those economies picking up. So I think there is some cautiousness around with people saving, but I think people will get out, enjoy Christmas. But I think there is some still concern, obviously, with the turmoil and with the predicted things such as terms such as recession being thrown around in Europe.
And Amanda Rishworth and Alan Tudge, that's where we'll have to leave it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lyndal. Thanks, Amanda.
And thank you for joining Capitol Hill. Please join us at the same time tomorrow.